Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Fathom Insights. Today we're going to be talking about global flood modelling. My name is Sampson, I'm one of the directors at Fathom and I lead our product development. I'm joined today by James Savage. James is one of our senior developers and he has spent the last year working on the deployment of our latest generation of global flood data. So why build a global flood model? The image on the screen shows the availability of public flood data around the world when we started the company about 7 years ago. As you can see, whilst data was available in some Western European countries and Japan, coverage around most of the world was very limited, with partial coverage in North America and Australia, but most countries having no real public data whatsoever. And the reason for this is simple. Flood hazard can change very significantly over small spatial scales. And this means that flood models have to be run at very high resolutions. This makes them very data hungry, both in terms of the quantity of data that's required, but also the quality of data that's required. The resulting research challenge was, how do we move from local scale models, such as this model here of San Francisco Airport, the types of models that engineers were familiar with at the time, out to the continental scale? So as a research group, we outlined what we felt were the key challenges that needed to be solved in order to enable continental scale modelling. And in collaboration with others around the world, we went about solving these problems. Our results can be found in a series of papers that have been published in the peer-reviewed literature. And links to these papers can all be found on our website if you would like to see the details. The result of 2 or 3 years worth of research at the time led to the release of our first product, the version 1 of the Fathom-Global data. This was a globally consistent set of maps at 90-meter resolution that covered both fluvial and pluvial hazards, so that's riverine flooding as well as surface water flooding. We covered 10 return periods from the 5-year out to the 1,000-year, and we also attempted to model the effects of flood defences around the world using assumed and observed flood defence data where available. So now I'm going to hand off to James, who's going to talk a little bit about the various bits of new research that have gone into the latest release of our Fathom Global Flood data.
Thanks, Chris. And yeah, as Chris says, I've been working on incorporating some of the latest science over the last few years into version 2 of the Fathom Global Flood Maps. So to start with, one of the significant data sets that's been released is the MERIT DEM. This is a global terrain data set at 3 arcseconds, around 90-meter resolution, and has removed many of the errors from previous global data sets, including some biases, striping, speckle, and issues with vegetation, such as tree height bias. This has significantly improved the elevations in flat, low-lying areas in particular, such as floodplains, which is really key when representing kind of river networks globally and trying to map flood risk. So this is an example of the Mekong Delta. On the left-hand side, we can see the previous version of the terrain data set, and there's striping evident throughout the delta, which would have a significant effect on flood inundations that are mapped within the model. On the right-hand side, after all of these corrections have been made, you can see a much smoother DEM. A lot of these issues and biases have been removed from the terrain data set. And we can see from the flood map that this results in a very neat flood map. We can see the kind of main topographic features that are controlling flow pathways within the delta. And there's no evidence of the striping and speckle issues that were there before. The next data set, which has brought significant improvement to our flood maps, is in the river channels. So understanding where the river channels are within the globe is really important, because if we don't know that, then we're not going to be able to map the locations of flood risk correctly. And there's a new data set called MERIT Hydro, again, done by the same developers as MERIT DEM. And this has brought a significantly improved global hydrography data set. It's a fusion of a number of different data sets, including OpenStreetMap. And that's really key because it means that the location of river channels within urban areas has now been significantly improved. On the screen now is an example of the Chao Phraya just north of Bangkok. We can see on the left-hand side is the river channel network represented using hydrosheds, and on the right-hand side using MERIT, or MERIT Hydro. And as we can see, the Chao Phraya, represented by the pink channel, has been incorrectly diverted using hydrosheds to the left of the urban area, whereas MERIT has the channel in the right location. And the significance of this is that it's diverted the channel away from an industrial estate which actually flooded in 2011, which is where Western Digital's factory is located, causing a spike in memory prices. So by representing the channels using merit, we'll be able to kind of better pick up these at-risk areas. A third improvement that we've incorporated into the model is a new channel solver. So we've developed a new methodology that has improved the channel bathymetry estimation using gradually varying flow equations. And this has improved the model, particularly along floodplains in areas where the flow was calculated previously using the diffusers and shallow wave properties. We've been put a pub journal paper together for this, and it's currently in preparation for publication. And I can show an example now of what we have done using this channel solver. So on screen now is an example of the channel solver in action. How it works is that the model iteratively solves the bed elevations whilst trying to ensure that the water surface elevation matches the observed bank elevations as closely as possible. And what this allows the model to do is to behave more realistically at high frequency events, such as the 5-year and the 10-year return period events, because it allows a tight coupling between the discharge estimates and the channel geometries, which is vital for handling these events. So what does this all mean when it comes together? Well, here's an example in Ho Chi Minh of our version 2 flood map. And we can see that there's a lot of detail within the flood map. We can't see any of the issues with the DEMs that we've seen before. And we've got all the rivers nicely identified and in the right place. So here on the screen is an example comparing our flood maps in Argentina. So we've got version 1 on the left-hand side and version 2 on the right-hand side. We can see that on the left-hand side, there's some kind of speckle in the flood map, which isn't apparent in the right-hand side. And we can see a significant improvement in the fidelity of our model. However, importantly, there's no real shift in bias between version 1 and version 2. And this underlines that the methodologies that we've been applying as part of our global modeling framework are good, and we're happy that they're representing the flood dynamics correctly. Here's an example in Tanzania, and as we can see, there's no real shift in bias again, and we can still see this improved representation of rivers within our version 2 flood map. We can also categorize our data too, so that we can tailor our outputs to the risk appetite of the client and to allow them to make quick underwriting decisions.
Thanks, James. One of the most interesting areas of research at the moment is the translation of static hazard maps, such as the ones we've just seen, into stochastic event sets suitable for CAT models. And the real research challenge is how you do that at the global scale and how you do it in data scarce regions. This is something we're actively working on at the moment. We have some research papers under review at journals, and we also have prototype models out with clients. And we'll go into more detail about this in a future video. But for now, thanks for watching. If you've got any questions about what we've talked about today, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.